All right, so this video is going to teach us how to factor trinomials when the leading coefficient is just 1. But first, your joke of the day. Why was the math book so sad? Because it had so many problems. All right, so we're going to learn to factor a trinomial that's in the form of x squared plus bx plus c. So remember that when we had two binomials like this and we multiplied them out, we would say we're taking the first term and we multiply it by everything in the second term. So that gave us x squared plus the 5x. Then we took the second term in that first binomial and we multiplied it by everything. And so we would say, yes, we would play tag with these things. And then sometimes we could join those two middle terms together, giving us x squared plus 9x plus 20. Well, now what we're going to do is notice we're given this format right here. We're factoring in this format. So we're going to try to take this and we're going to create these two binomials. So we've got to figure out what these two numbers are that need to go in here to create this binomial that when it's multiplied out, it becomes this. Remember, we want things to be in product form when we are factoring. So notice here that what we're doing is that we're creating these binomials and we're putting this term but not squared in the front. And then what we're doing is we're taking this last term, the C term, because remember this is our A term, here's our B term, here's our C term. We're looking at that 20 and we're thinking, what are the factors of 20 that might add up to be that B term? Okay, so we're saying what times what is 20, whose sum would be the B term, that's 9. Well, we already know in this case it's 4 times 5, but look what happens. So if I list out all the factors, that's 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. So 20 has got several factors, but only one of those factors adds up to be 9. So those have to be my factors that go in here. Okay, and that's just all that we're going to do for each one of these. What we're going to list out those factors of the C term and then come up with which one adds up to be the B term. So multiplies to be C, adds to be the B. So again, here's our A term, here's our B term, here's our C term. Well, we're going to look for factors of 6 whose sum is the B term, which is 5. Hold on. I tried to write a B. Okay, so let's list them out. 1 times 6. Well, that doesn't add up to be 5. 2 times 3. Well, yes, that one adds up because 2 plus 3 is equal to 5. So because we've got an x squared, my binomials both are going to start with the x, not x squared, just the x, because remember we're going to multiply them together, and then everything's positive, so x plus 2, x plus 3. And remember that's the same thing as x plus 3 times x plus 2. That order does not matter. So either one or, okay? All right, well now we have one that's a negative. So we're looking at x squared plus 3x minus 10. So A is 1, B is the 3, and C is negative 10. So we're saying factors of negative 10. So what times what is negative 10, whose sum is 3? Well, 1 times 10, 2 times 5, but notice we have negative 10. But when I add them together, I need a positive number. So that means we really need to be saying negative 1 times 10 is, and then if I have the sum, that would be 9. Negative 2 times 5 gives me negative 10 when I multiply, and that gives me a sum of 3. So those are the factors that I want. So my variable is an x, so x minus 2, x plus 5. Those are the factors. Okay, so here we're thinking factors of negative 27 whose sum is negative 6. Okay, when I add these together, I need to come up with a negative number. So that means my bigger number here needs to be negative. So that gives me 1 times negative 27. Well, that sum is negative 26, so that's not it. 2 doesn't go in there, but what about 3 times negative 9? Well, 3 plus a negative 9 is equal to a negative 6. So those are the factors that we are looking for. And now this variable is a y, so those are going to be y and y. And we're going to say we have a positive 3 and a negative 9. And you can multiply these things back out because you know how to multiply them, and see if you come back to this, then that's fine. Then you know you've done it right. You might think about some more practice on this. I don't know. See how you do on your homework. So we're talking factors of C, which is negative 7, whose sum is B, and in this case our B is 1. So we need to add and get more positives, so that means the negative needs to be the smaller number. So negative 1 times 7. Well, that adds up to be 6. So that's not it. What are some other factors of 7? Well, there aren't any. So this cannot be factored. So if something cannot be factored, what do we call it? Do you remember? It is considered prime. So we want to remember that. It's prime if it cannot be factored. Okay, so sometimes people have trouble with these when they've got the x squared and the y squared. Well, just know when you do this, you're going to have the x at the beginning, the y at the end. Okay, so now we're still coming up with what are factors of my c term, which is 3, whose sum is my b term, which is negative 4. Okay, well, how are we going to multiply and get a positive number, but add and get a negative number? Well, that's right. Negative times a negative gives us a positive. So negative 1 times negative 3 gives us a positive 3. And then if we add those together, we're going to get a negative 4. So those are our answers. And so you've got to make sure that you get those signs right in here. So that is minus 1y and minus 3y. You see how we put the 1 and the 3? Now you do not have to put that 1 because that y is there. You can leave them off if you want to, and that is perfectly acceptable. Either way, so you can either put the 1 there or leave them off. All right, so when we are factoring, we need to make sure that we always look for a GCF first. And a lot of times a big hint will be when your instructions say to factor something completely. So if it says to factor completely, make sure you're always looking for a GCF. Not all the time, but a lot of times it will say that. So first off, if I have something that's 2x cubed plus 6x squared minus 56x, well, that's not in the format of the x squared plus bx plus c that we're looking for, that we know how to factor. So that should be my first hint that there might be a GCF in this expression. So what number is going to go in 2, 6, and 56? Well, obviously 2 is. And then we always take that lowest exponent. Every one of these terms has an x in it, so we're going to take that x out also. So remember, it's like we're dividing each term by that GCF. So we've got the 2x on the outside, and that leaves us with x squared plus 3x minus 28. Okay, so now we want to take a look at this part and say, can we factor that some more? So what times what is 28? So let me put over here, we're looking for factors of negative 28 whose sum is 3. Okay, so let's see, we've got we need more positives, so that'll be negative 1 times 28. That does not add up to be 3. Negative 2 times 14. That does not add up to be 8. So 3 doesn't go into it. So what about 4? So negative 4 times 7. Well, that adds up to be 3, so these are my factors. Now remember, you've already taken this 2x out, but the 2x is still part of that. Remember, we want this thing in product form, and so if everything's multiplied together, then that's still in product form, so that 2x still needs to be on the outside there. So we have a negative 4 is one of our factors, and that positive 7 is our other factor. So that whole thing there is your answer, because if we go back and multiply all that out, we get back to our original expression. All right, so let's look at this one. We have another GCF here. So see if you can figure out what that is, keeping in mind that whenever that leading coefficient is negative, we take out a negative GCF. In this case, it's just going to be the negative 2. So let's take out a negative 2 out of all these terms. Sorry, there goes my dog again. And that's going to leave us with, remember we changed those signs inside there. So we're dividing everything here by negative 2. That gives us y squared plus 5y minus 14. Then we only take what's left and we see if we can factor it some more. So we're going to take that negative 2 and see if we can come up with these. So we're looking for factors of negative 14 whose sum is 5. And that should be negative 2 times 7. That adds up to be 5. So that is it. So this one starts with a y, so make sure you put y in there. Don't just get in the habit of putting the x, y minus 2, y plus 7, final answer.